Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our third Lunch and Learn for Whole Health Louisiana. I'm Anna Osland. I'm the Director of Research at the Blanco Center. The Whole Health Louisiana Initiative is a collaborative effort led by the Louisiana Department of Health, is the public sector anchor and funder of the Whole Health Louisiana Initiative, and the Blanco Center leads the plan's implementation and evaluation. If you're unfamiliar with what Whole Health Louisiana is, it's the state's cross-sector initiative intended to systematically address, mitigate, and prevent childhood adversity within our systems of care and support. Whole Health Louisiana has 4 priority areas and goals: collaboration, awareness, workforce, and prevention and healing. With these priorities in mind, WHL's vision is to build a state where children, families, and community members across Louisiana are healthy and thriving, regardless of who they are or where they live. Each of our 3 webinars so far, or our other 2 and then this one, have touched on different topics. And today we'll have a new topic, and we're excited that you're joining us here today. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Quinn, who will be the moderator for today's session and introduce our speakers. All right, Quinn, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. Let's get started. So I'm Quinn Nguyen, a research associate here at the Blanco Center at UL Lafayette, and the coordinator for the Whole Health Louisiana project. I hold a master's in social work and a public health degree from Columbia University, and I will be moderating this webinar and all of the webinars to come, along with my colleagues here at the Blanco Center. So as a part of this initiative, we are holding a variety of different activities meant to raise awareness and deepen conversation about trauma-informed care practices. Our virtual Lunch and Learn series touches on the workforce priority area of the Whole Health Louisiana Plan and features presentations from industry professionals and subject matter experts. We have a webinar planned for one Thursday of each month through June, and each webinar will touch on various topics related to the goals and objectives of Whole Health Louisiana. Our planned webinars are listed on the Eventbrite page that you all use to register for today's event. And in addition to the webinar series, Whole Health Louisiana is conducting in-person regional trainings sessions across the state of Louisiana, with our next one being in Houma. If you're interested in attending our next regional training, feel free to get in contact with me, any of the Blanco Center staff, or check out the link that we will drop in the chat shortly. Before I introduce our speakers for today, I want to mention that our ASL interpretation today will be led by Lisa Gill. You should see them pinned to your screen and view the interpretation throughout. So I'm now going to go ahead and introduce our 2 speakers. Our first speaker is Cassandra James-Weathersby, who is a recovery life coach, an advocate, and a champion for mental wellness and women's emotional healing. As a survivor turned thriver of her battles with trauma and mental illness, Cassandra is working to encourage other Black and Brown women to stand in their truth and break the silence barrier around trauma that has kept many trapped. Since founding the nonprofit organization Women Do Heal in 2019, she has continued to facilitate those meaningful conversations through coaching, training, healing conversations, respite events, and wellness activities. She has over 40 years of lived experience in mental health. She has over 8 years as a certified recognized peer support specialist, a recovery coach professional and trainer of trainers, an ACE educator, a certified RAP facilitator, a breath work facilitator, and a target health facilitator. So as you can see, she has so much insight and so much knowledge, and she'll be here excited to share all of that with you in our presentation today. Our next speaker is Sheri Eastridge, who joined the ACE Educator Program with the Louisiana Department of Health Bureau of Family Health in 2018 as a volunteer ACE educator. And then she became the program coordinator at the end of 2021. She comes to this position after 15 years in nonprofit and community leadership, mostly in programs serving domestic violence survivors and children and families experiencing homelessness. She has extensive experience in training and developing trauma-informed programming across a variety of service settings. She has trained thousands of professionals, civic leaders, and other community members on the impact of trauma and strategies to build resilience. She is passionate about increasing awareness about the connection between early adversity and health and well-being throughout the lifespan. And if you have attended our previous regional trainings throughout the state, you can also see that Sheri has been our speaker and ACE educator for a lot of our previous regional trainings. And so we're excited to also have Sheri come on and present their webinar for today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers to begin their webinar presentation.
Thanks, Quinn. I appreciate that introduction, and I know that Cassie does too. This is our training module here at the Louisiana ACE Educator Program that we use directly for work with parents. And I don't get to work with parents very often, but a lot of our volunteers do. And the information that it contains is very straightforward. We focus on strategies for building family resilience. So let's just dig in. All right, here are our objectives for today. They're listed here. We're going to discuss the importance of parents taking care of themselves and deepen our understanding about the impact of adversity and toxic stress on children, as well as learning some strategies to decrease that impact and build resilience with our families. It's kind of a big ask for a short meeting, so we're going to jump in. But before we get started with that, oops. Went too fast there. We do want to take a moment while we're going to talk about how to help parents build their own capacity. Let's build ours with a short breathing exercise. So I know that we're all kind of sitting down for lunch, but this is just a short minute-long breathing exercise that you all experienced a little bit of a calming and being able to get present so that you can engage in learning with us today. We like to include an activity like that in this training because some of the families that we're all working with are so stressed and so busy, and really finding a moment to de-stress the body and engage in being present is something that can be difficult and challenging. And a lot of folks don't even know where to begin when we say to de-stress. So we like to give them an example of how to do that, because we're going to talk to them about putting their own oxygen mask on first, taking care of themselves. And so when we ask folks, like, what does it look like for us to take care of ourselves? We want to acknowledge that there's a difference between self-care and self-soothing. And while we need self-soothing activities like maybe getting a massage or even going to therapy or getting your nails done, watching your favorite show, whatever that might be, we need to look deeper at what it means to take care of ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our spirits in all realms regularly, so that we can show up and bring our best selves to the very important job of parenting, right? Right. Because when we don't, we're more vulnerable to parental burnout. And this is characterized by emotional exhaustion, that fatigue that comes from carrying too much for too long, right? I know for me, when I get burnout as a parent, most of my kids are grown now, but when they were younger, I would be present. I would sit at the dining table in the evening after dinner and kitchen cleanup, and I was there if they wanted to talk, but I was always on my computer doing some work, focused on something about me and my life, and I would not really listen to them. I would just be scanning for key important things. And when I would catch myself doing that, I would know that I needed to invest in myself a little bit more so that I can be more present for my kids. Parental burnout can affect the way we feel, the way we think, the way that we are interacting with others in relationships. So we want to make sure that parents know that self-care is the best prevention for this parental burnout. Technical difficulties. There we go. So now that we understand a little bit more about the importance of self-care for parents, let's watch this short video from the Harvard Center for the Developing Child that helps us to understand how experience builds brains.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So we have another way of thinking about understanding how the brain develops as well. And this is a really handy tool for sharing with parents. It helps them to understand what's going on in their child's developing brain, as well as it's a tool that can be used with kids as young as 5 to help them understand their own brain and to talk about their emotions and how they're feeling and doing. So you can see it illustrated here, this hand model of the brain. Generally speaking, early development is focused on the brainstem. So that would be like the palm of your hand there. And there are structures there that are important for life supporting functions. So like regulating your heartbeat and your body temperature and digestion and all the things that you do without really being conscious of it. And it communicates, it relays information down the spinal cord to coordinate like movement of the body. And so if anyone has worked with babies, they're not born with great control over their body or their bodily functions. And so much development is happening there in infancy. And then as we grow and develop, there are capacities for learning and memory and systems that regulate mood and emotion, as well as helping us to respond to danger. And that's located here, like our thumb crossing over our palm in the limbic system there. And the amygdala and hippocampus work together to help us to respond to danger in ways that will help to keep us alive. And once the brain can orchestrate internal functions and we can connect to a caregiver that will take care of us and protect us, because we are a species that is altricial, which means we are 100% dependent upon a caregiver when we come into this world as an infant. We're not like little baby horses that are going to get up and run within an hour or two of being born. We have to have our caregiver take care of us. So when we can coordinate our own functions and connect with a caregiver and respond physically and emotionally to danger, then all kinds of connections between the brain will be developed through experience so that we will have all these capacities that we're going to need in adulthood. And we'll do that through our cortex. There's a very specialized part of our cortex called the prefrontal cortex here, where things like thinking, critical thinking, and planning and judgment and impulse control take place. And this is called the prefrontal cortex. It's like those first knuckles of your fingers, right? And when we, this part of our brain isn't finished developing until our mid to late 20s, right? An experience is going to affect and shape how all of these parts of the brain develop together. So we often work with educators to show little kids this model, and they talk about their barking guard dog there in their limbic system that might come out when they flip their lids, and how they might be able to re-engage the wise old owl who can control over that limbic system. It's a really great tool for using with kids. Cassie will share more tools with us here in just a moment. So, when we face challenges like bullying or feeling really bad about ourselves, our bodies respond the same way as if we were actually in physical danger by activating that stress response system, which is housed there and controlled by that amygdala inside the limbic system. And when kids experience adversity without support, it can really result in a lot of stress, what we call toxic stress. That's too much stress for too long of a time, and it harms the body. Toxic stress affects how brains develop. It can literally kill neurons, and it impacts our immune system, causing a lot of inflammation in our bodies and doing a lot of harm that way. It can even affect how our DNA and genes are working and being expressed in our bodies. So if someone is under constant stress, it can cause the body's stress response to stay on all the time, even during normal day-to-day activities. And that can cause a lot of wear and tear on the body. It can also result in long-term damage. So, normally when we experience normal stress, we adapt to it, we respond, and we recover. But when we're under too much stress for too long of a time period, it can have serious consequences on our health and well-being throughout the lifespan. So we want to help parents understand what they can do to help decrease the impact of this toxic stress for kids. And I will let Cassie talk to us about that.
Thank you so much, Sheri. And this is really, really special to me because I did not learn about ACEs until my babies were whole grown. And by then, we'd experienced a number of these things. And so to have learned later through my work, these things was really, really an amazing thing. So when we're talking about what parents can do to support children experiencing adversity, parents have the ability to deliver daily doses of healing interactions that have the potential to serve as an antidote to toxic stress. So while science demonstrates that the cumulative dose of early adversity is most harmful compared to later in life, it also shows that the cumulative dose of healing, nurturing interactions, like being a caring and responsive adult in a young person's life, is most healing. I'm going to say that one again. Like being a caring and responsive adult in a young person's life is most healing. When parents or caregivers provide children with the tools to recognize what they are feeling and effectively manage or respond to those feelings, to calm their bodies down, healing begins. I just think that's awesome. Supportive, caring, and emotionally responsive relationships between children and adults can serve as a buffer to the harmful effects of adverse childhood experiences. So in order to be emotionally responsive caretakers, we must understand emotions. Emotions are cycles that happen in our bodies. They are also neurological events. Nearly every signal in our body responds to emotions. And those of us in the space, we know you've had those moments where something happened and like you can feel it all throughout your body, So the same thing happens with our kiddos. Emotions are involuntary responses with a beginning, middle, and end. We have to move completely through the cycle of an emotion, or the emotion will get stuck. If we get stuck and don't deal with our emotions will deal with us. okay? And a parent can support a child with moving through an emotion fully. And today we'll spend the rest of our time discussing how social and emotional, how social learning can help parents do exactly that, okay? Then we're talking about self-awareness here. And give me just a second. But as we're talking about self-awareness, we see here on the slide, how do I feel? How do other people perceive me? What are my strengths? What am I good at? What are my ideas about the role of a parent? So let's review each competency. I'll give you some examples on how to use these a little bit later. But self-awareness, this is the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior. This includes the ability to accurately assess one's own strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and growth mindset. Self-awareness refers to our ability to process and understand information and experiences. Self-awareness includes identifying emotions, we talked about that just a minute ago, an accurate self-perception, recognizing strengths, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. An example of practicing self-awareness is establishing reflection time at night to journal before bed. This kind of reflection creates space to recognize your own emotions and how they influence your interaction with others. How many journals do we have out there? So, self-management. How do I manage these impulses? How do I manage stress? How do I create order in my life? How do I motivate myself? And where are my goals? What are my goals, rather? So self-management is the ability to successfully regulate your own emotions, thoughts, behaviors in different situations, effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating yourself. This includes the ability to set and work towards personal and academic goals. Self-management is our ability to manage and express emotions that arise via our self-awareness. This includes impulse control, stress management, self-discipline, self-motivation, goal setting, and organizational skills. An example of practicing self-management is practicing belly breathing when you're feeling anxious. Sometimes we need that minute to woosah. We take that minute, take that deep breath in through our nose, feel that belly and the diaphragm, and then out through our mouth, okay? That is an example of self-management. Social awareness. Can I walk in someone else's shoes? How do I feel? How do I show and feel empathy for others? How do I respond to people who are different from me? What can I do to show respect to others or for others? Social awareness is the ability to take another person's perspective and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. This is also the ability to understand social and ethical norms for behavior and to recognize family, school, and community resources and supports. Social awareness includes perspective taking, empathy, appreciating diversity, and respect for others. I love this, and I'm not going to stay long, but when I used to do RAP, which was a wraparound program for children and families who were in crisis, that was one of the key components, was being able to incorporate the children's community. So their social supports, helping the family develop those as well. And that wraparound of those different members in the community would make a huge difference for the family as well as the children and the parents too, because we know that those loads can be heavy. One ways that we can enhance social awareness of young people is to talk to them about the things that they are being exposed to, such as the Black Lives Matter protest. Ask them how they were feeling. And of course, this was some time ago, but these things we know still, affect us today. So ask them about how they're feeling about these things when they pop up on the news, when they pop up on social media, right? Talk about the reasons that people feel compelled and engaged in a protest, as well as unfair treatment. Have them reflect on a time when they felt they were being treated unfairly at school or at home. Responsible decision making. How do I identify these problems? How do I make sense of situations? How do I come up with solutions? Does my problem-solving style work for me? How do I practice my values? Responsible decision-making is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. This involves realistic evaluation of consequences of various actions and a consideration of the well-being of oneself and others. Responsible decision-making includes identifying problems, analyzing situations, solving problems, evaluating, reflecting, and ethical responsibility. We can foster the development of responsible decision-making by helping our children to problem solve by challenging them to generate 3 potential solutions for a problem. We can also foster the development of responsible decision-making by having family meetings and setting clear expectations to talk through consequences of when expectations are not met. Family meetings, game changer, because it teaches them early, okay, how to set those expectations and how to follow through, as opposed to, I know I was guilty of before some time of putting those rules out there and then no follow through whatsoever. What were we going to get? Relationship skills. Oh, we're going on to the next. Okay. Relationship skills. What are my communication strengths? How can my communication be improved? How do I build relationships? How do I seek support? How well do I cooperate with others? Relationship skills are the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. These are also the ability to communicate clearly, listen well, cooperate with others, resist inappropriate social pressure, negotiate conflict constructively, and seek and offer help when needed. Go back to seek help too, because a lot of us professional helpers, or those of us who have these degrees from People Please University, we don't like the seeking help part, but that is just as important as the offering of help, okay? Relationship skills include communication, social engagement, relationship building, and teamwork. We can support the development of relationship skills by working on family projects together, playing family games, practicing or role-playing ways to initiate friendships, teaching ways to nurture friendships, practicing assertive communication, and having family meetings to resolve conflicts. And emotional management trains the brain. So emotional learning trains the brain. The brain is malleable. And as we learn a new skill, the shape of the brain actually changes. Our brains are built to change in response to our experiences and environments. The brains of children are constantly being shaped by experiences. The brain is the organ that is the target of emotional management interventions. This works because behavioral interventions change the brain. Emotional management expands children's capacity to regulate emotions and promotes positive brain changes. Developing new skills through through the management creates new pathways in the form of new neuron connections. We can form new neuron connections through our entire lives. And while the majority of our connections happen earlier in life, it is important to understand that these new pathways can be created at all ages. So parents can expand their own emotional management while engaging in activities that facilitate emotional management of their children and taking on new challenges that you are building new roadways and bridges. I can tell you as a parent that had a whole lot of ACEs that that is true. The more I started to learn about my own wellness, I learned to manage my emotions. The more I started to incorporate emotional management into my life, the more my capacity to be able to handle that changed. And so even though my babies were grown by the time I learned these things, it did start to have a positive impact on my connectivity to my children. Okay, at-home strategies. So what can parents do at home to expand children's emotional and learning? Family meetings, we talked about that a few minutes ago. Family meetings are a good way to check in on how everyone's feeling. Set the expectations, give praise for accomplishment, discuss challenges, and navigate conflict. Navigate conflict. Some of us are really good at the first few, but the navigating conflict sometimes can be challenging. Give compliments. This is a great way to help young people recognize the characteristics that help make them special and to help them recognize these characteristics in others. Encourage and model acts of kindness. Acts of kindness are great ways to build relationships. That was one thing the kiddos and I would do, from leaving out hot chocolate or bringing hot chocolate to the trash men as they were coming to get the trash, and bringing cold water in the summertime, little things like that. To this day, I see my kids modeling those things that we did when we were younger, when they were younger. Establish a journaling and drawing routine at night before bed. This is a helpful self-awareness practice. Share 3 to 5 things you're grateful for each day. This can help generate feelings of well-being. Support your child in identifying qualities that make them special. This can help build your child's confidence and feelings of self-efficacy. Encourage the use of feeling words. This expands emotional vocabulary. The ability to name your feelings calms down the alarm response center of the brain. My oldest grandbaby, is on the spectrum. And so we started early using the feelings wheel, and her stopping to use her words, pick out how she was feeling, and eventually there were words on the wheel. But that was a huge, huge way to kind of help us sometimes stop before we were at complete meltdown, And if we did make it to meltdown, being able to come back and now say, okay, how are you feeling now? Take nature walks. Spend time outside and observe nature. This is a great self-management technique. So what is this vagus nerve? Okay. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It connects the brain to many important organs throughout the body, including the gut, the intestines and stomach, the heart, and the lungs. It influences your digestive function, breathing, and heart rate. Ever felt sick on the stomach when a lot of stress was happening? Ever had challenges in your bowels and how they were working or not? That gut feeling, vagus nerve. Stimulation of the vagus nerve shifts our bodies from fight, flight, or rest and digest by activating the parasympathetic nervous system. The vagus nerve plays an essential role in the management of emotional well-being. So shifting the body from fight, rest, and digest. Okay, some great, great things. So let's discuss some of these activities that we see here in the slide. So we can go from laughing. Laughing centers the stress that the body is capturing. It will counter stress, rather, that the body is capturing. Watch something funny and laugh out loud as often as you need to. Okay. Singing, dancing, humming, humming a gentle tune that brings you peace. Humming is an exercise that helps you control your inhalations and exhalations, which in turn can have a calming effect on your entire nervous system. Do things that you love. Now, sometimes for parents, this can be particularly tough as you poured and poured and poured, and you may not really know what you love. I always advise the ladies that I work with, start at what you don't like. And usually on the opposite side of that is what something that you do like. So great place to start if you don't know what it is that you like, and just trial and error from there. Get social. Get social. With us having social media like we do, sometimes we can feel like we're so connected, but it is not a replacement for literally leaving the house and connecting with other people in real time, getting real hugs, being connected, okay? Get social. Yoga. Yoga is great. It helps with that alignment. Mindfulness, meditation regulates our mind, body, and spirit. Belly breathing, we talked about that a few minutes ago, regulates our heart rate and helps to release constricted parts of our bodies, gets the oxygen in, the O2 out. And take a nap. Yeah, go sit down somewhere, as old folks used to say, right? Take a nap and rest. So expanding our emotional vocabulary. And this kind of goes back to that feelings wheel that we were talking about earlier when I was talking about my grandbaby. So expanding our emotional vocabulary is essential to understanding and describing your feelings. You can practice emotional vocabulary by ordering a deck of feeling cards or feelings wheel, or writing feelings out on index cards, having children to pull up a feelings card each day. Help them understand what the feelings mean and have them give an example of a time when they felt that way. According to Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, when you name your feelings, you can activate the area of the brain that helps you to react less. By helping your children name their feelings, you help the alarm center response in their brain turn down significantly. Having a strong emotional vocabulary can increase our emotional intelligence and help us in our day-to-day social interactions. Children, especially young children, can struggle to articulate how they're feeling. When children have an increased emotional vocabulary, they feel understood. Their emotional awareness increases, and the more emotion words they know, the better they are at identifying how they feel and communicating that to others. And if you've been doing this work for a minute, you know communication and being able to matters. So practicing mindfulness. There are many ways to practice living in the present moment and checking in with your own needs. Some examples include identifying things that you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch right now. Doing a task that fully engages your intention, both mental and physical, such as knitting, sports, and other things. Mindful eating, and this is a big one. Really savoring your meals by removing distractions and paying attention to your senses while you eat, and even being intentional about paying attention to the people you're communicating with, being present in that moment. You know, many ways. Or start the day with a mindful minute. Here are some examples that we'll go over. And the benefits of meditation are reduced levels of cortisol and other stress hormones that are reduced by psychological indicators of active stress response, like blood pressure and heart rate. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in the interest of time, I'm not gonna play the videos, but just to show you, there are all kinds of free resources out there on the internet. That if parents don't feel comfortable with things like this, don't know how to do it themselves, they can find free, easy resources at their fingertips.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And this is a good one. So the I Spy game, which we, kind of touched on earlier, a different way to make it fun for kids, is, helping them focus on the present moment during times of emotional distress or anxiety and go through all five of the senses. So I spy with my eyes what I see, with my ears what I hear, with my nose what I smell, my taste, and, finally have them touch or tap a surface. And the stop skill, distress tolerance. Okay. And if you see on the slide, stop, and we think stop, and no, old school, immediately think a stop sign, right? But stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully. Distress tolerance is an individual's ability to manage actual or perceived emotional distress. And what we have learned is that perceived emotional distress is just as distressful as actual, right? Parents can support their children in managing emotional distress by teaching distress tolerance. Remember earlier in the presentation when we talked about emotions having a beginning, middle, and an end. Well, if we don't move through these difficult emotions, they get stuck. Distress tolerance expands our ability to sit in the discomfort of a physical emotion. Let's talk about some of the techniques to help children. So, to help you as individuals, parents, and children go through so. So, observe the uncomfortable emotion, ride the wave. As your child is sitting in a difficult emotional state, such as sadness, remind them that it's okay to cry and that uncomfortable feelings are temporary and they don't last forever. Help them to observe themselves in the emotion by helping them to shift their attention to what the emotion feels like in their body. This will help to bring them back to the present moment and shift them away from the experience, bringing them emotional distress. Now, again, old school, the kids used to fall, hurt themselves. Oh, you're all right. Get up, get up. It's all right. Don't shake it off. Shake it off. Don't cry. Don't cry. Cry. Let's go through this. Progressive muscle relaxation is an exercise that aids the body in relaxation. It requires progressively tensing the muscles in the body and releasing the tension. This exercise can be helpful with tolerating emotional distress. You can practice progressive muscle relaxation at night with your child before bed, and this will make it easier to implement during times of emotional distress. They say practice makes perfect back in the day. Well, we know there's no perfect. However, it does help when you've done something enough for it to come up when you need it the most. And that includes activities like this.
So this next slide is just another video example. In our longer presentations, we will go through the whole videos with parents so they can experience it and then see resources available to them if they're not comfortable leading it themselves with their children. But I'm going to let Cassie get on to sharing the resources with you and we'll wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheri. And so here's some great resources that they have now. The Calm app, which they had a free version and then you could, eventually subscribe. Resilienceguide.org, which is a comprehensive guide for parents in English and Spanish. Infoaboutkids.org, supporting kids in body, mind, emotion, and relationships. Effectivechildtherapy.org, answers to questions about therapy, therapists, and medications. GetEpic.com, ebooks for kids with paid and free subscription options. So again, just a number of sites that people can use to help them.
Okay, so that's our content. I think we're ready to open up for some Q&A, Quinn.
Yes, thank you both for your amazing and very insightful presentation. I'm gonna start moderating and fielding some questions or comments that you guys may have. So if you do have any for our amazing presenters here, please be sure to put it in the Q&A box down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. While we wait for some questions to start coming in, I do have a question myself for either Sheri or Cassandra, whoever wants to answer. So I know that the ACE Educator program is run through requests, usually by organizations and communities. Is that correct? Yes.
So I'll take that one. Do you mean our request for presentations run through our program through? Yeah.
Yeah, like for the
So
request for
yeah.
for you guys to come and talk and present.
The easiest way is to go to our website, partnersforfamilyhealth.org/ACEs, and use the links there to see what presentation modules are available, and then to submit your request through our online form.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to put that out there for any of you who may be interested in having an ACE educator come and speak to you in your organization. And so the second part of my question is that how do you see the impact if there was a policy put in place that mandated trainings, such as the ones that you guys just gave to us, and also the trauma-informed care trainings that some people may not be familiar with if they haven't been to our regional trainings. But how do you see the impact of that if there was a policy change mandating such trainings?
Cassie, do you want to take that one?
That is very interesting. And so just to make sure I understood your question, you're asking how do we see mandated policy changes affecting ACEs? Is that what you're asking?
I mean more so as how do you see the impact of mandating um workshops and presentations such as the ones that the ACE Educator programs usually gives, and mandating it to all nonprofit organizations or any organization that works with children and families.
Got you. Personally, I think that that would be a really amazing and needful thing in our organization. It is something that is required of our volunteers, and everyone who is working with us thus far. It's something that you have to have. We actually went through it last January. We'll take our next cohort through it this coming year, because I understand, having been a recipient of services as well as gone through things with my children. When you don't understand these things, how people not out of malice, but when you just don't understand how trauma can affect children, and you don't understand how it can affect adults who have been stuck in these emotions that haven't processed, that have just been kind of sucking it up and going along. People might look at them, the word that they used to use a lot was like non-compliance and words like that, when actually somebody is just traumatized and they're just doing the best that they can. Something, they could have been triggered, fight or flight mode. All these things are coming up. And when we don't understand these things, a lot of times what could just really be a moment to breathe, great communication, turns into a whole thing that doesn't have to be. So I think that implementing policies that would mandate those things for nonprofit organizations, and in my humble opinion, even those who serve on the boards as well, would make a huge difference, because it's a one thing to hear it. It's a whole nother thing to go through something like this and to learn it firsthand yourself. So that's my thoughts on it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We have another question. This Anna Castile, you raised your hand, so I'm gonna see if I can unmute you so you can.
I think we probably both want to chime in on this one. I'll say, I grew up in poverty, and my husband and I both lived well below the poverty line for the first 12 years of our marriage, when our kids were little. So finding things affordable was really important. Going to the park was like number one. The exercise the kids got, the sunshine and vitamin D that we got, the respite from care. Our kids engaged in something else for a minute and not demanding needs from us was a really great way to get some self-care in, as well as when I first started doing yoga, I used free videos on YouTube for instruction. And the library is just an incredible resource in every community for all kinds of free things, from classes to books for your kids. Librarians can help you find books on things like social awareness and emotion management, geared at all kinds of ages. There are so many resources embedded in our communities that we just either forget about or don't know how to access.
And I would have to say the same. I think that also sometimes a reframing of some of the things that you might be doing as a parent that you might be feeling guilty for, not realizing that it's not a harmful thing, it's you figuring out self-care. For example, before I knew all these things, before I went into my house, I had those minutes in my vehicle that I decompressed in and kind of left all the stress from work there. I didn't have language for it at the time, but what I was doing was practicing self-care and making sure that when I went in the house, I was present during some very stressful times. And so a reframing sometimes of what it is that we're doing that as parents, we can feel very guilty about can be just a game changer, because some of these things you've started to do that are actually very healthy coping mechanisms, but because we feel so selfish doing them, we think that we're doing something wrong. We think that we're being selfish, and that puts more stress on you. So even a reframing of how you're thinking about it can be huge. And yes, checking out resources, support groups. My organization has a support group that we do weekly from January to October. So there are so many organizations, there are so many other resources that you can find that have things that you can utilize. And here's the other thing. If you put on some shoes and they're uncomfortable and they don't work, you don't stop wearing shoes, right? You just find a pair of shoes that work. If you're working on something and you're trying it out and it's not a fit for you, don't just give up. I know you're busy, I know it's a lot, but keep going until you find those things, those number of things that work for you.
I couldn't agree with you more. And don't forget, for things like improving your sleep or nutrition, the things that are those self-care parts that we often don't think of, because we think about manicures and massages, but we don't think about eating right and going to bed on time. We can manage those kinds of things better, sometimes with free apps that we can put on our phone. There's tons of them out there.
Yes, absolutely. Makes a huge, huge difference. Let me see.
Thank you too for your tips. Self-care is so very important for everyone, especially people who are working in very intense fields. Our next question that we have is, are these skills are these skills transferable to other interactions like classrooms or in childcare settings?
They are. It can be challenging, you know. First of all, hearts and love to the educators. It can be challenging, but one thing that I think sometimes we don't think about is we have the profound opportunity to set the tone in our classrooms. We have the profound opportunity to do that. And so it may take some time, but yes, they can be transferable. And here's the thing, kids want to be included. We all want to belong. And so if we make that part of the culture in the classroom, that we check in with each other and we check on each other, yes, that could be a beautiful opportunity, not only for the kiddos, but for the teachers as well. So yes, it could be transferable. And for grown-ups, because we forget about us, if you're a professional caregiver and that's a teacher, community healers, are people in healthcare, social workers, coaches, if you're doing these jobs where you literally care for other people and hold space for people every day, making that part of your culture that you check on each other. and you make space to check on yourself. Huge, huge culture shift. So yes, very much transferable.
Couldn't agree more again. And I'll just add to that, there are some evidence-informed models for how to incorporate this information into settings like a classroom. So we developed our Introduction to Trauma-Informed Education module with those frameworks in mind. So that's another training module that can be requested through our website.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Our next question is, how do you balance encouraging children not to suppress their emotions while teaching them to pull it together when they need to?
I'll just use the example from my grandbaby, right? Those earlier years were really, really tough as we were learning about autism and helping her navigate, this, and having to educate her pre-K teachers on this as well. It was a very interesting time, to say the least, right? However, when we got to the point of meltdown, because it wasn't at that time a if, it was a when, it was the come down part that we used as an opportunity to check in about how you're feeling. As we started to do that all the time with having those conversations and realizing, okay, preventative wise, we have to start doing this, even if it's just, I don't want to pick up my toys. Okay, well, let's come on, let's ask this question. Why don't we? What's going on? So even taking a moment like that will become practice for later. So as it turns out now, we haven't had a meltdown in a minute, and the reason for that is because of that continued checking in. When there is frustration, okay, use your words. What are you feeling? What is going on? And I have to give mad props to my daughter, because she is very, very good at that, even when she's handling her own frustration. And here's the other thing, modeling. We very much underestimate how much modeling makes a difference. But modeling, hey, mommy needs a minute, teacher needs a minute, okay? Or teacher's going to go right here and I'll be right back. We think that it's a sign of weakness, but instead we're showing the kids, we're showing others, hey, this is how you love yourself well, and I'm loving myself well too by showing you how to do it. So just a thought.
I just want to wrap up real quick because it is time for ending, and I just want to thank our speakers, Sheri, thank you, Cassandra, thank you, and our interpreter, Lisa Gill, thank you so much for your support and for coming to today's webinar. I just want to announce a couple of reminders to take the post survey that is in the chat. If you are getting CEU credits, make sure you take that so you can receive your credits. And also, even if you're not receiving any credits, we would greatly appreciate it if you take our survey because it helps us improve our future Lunch and Learn webinars. We'll stay for a minute or two to answer any lingering questions that you may have. But other than that, again, thank you all for attending today's webinar, and we will see you again. There's one more question, if Sheri and Cassandra, you guys don't mind answering real quick. I'm not sure if this person is still on here. But they asked, have you seen examples of childcare centers that use mindfulness across the center versus in one classroom?
Well, I've covered the whole state, so I'll take this one, Cassie. I don't know that specifically I've seen it one versus the other, but I do know one of our ACE educators in the Lafayette area implemented some trauma-informed practices. She was a school counselor, implemented things that were school-wide. So like a hydroponic garden, instead of sending kids to in-school suspension, they got time in the hydroponic garden. And then, so looking at in schools, the positive behavior intervention and supports framework, trauma-informed education works very well with that. And so that was like a tier 1, it applies to everyone intervention. And then more specific interventions with other kids being applied at the classroom level. So things like using the hand model of the brain to help kids understand what's going on in their brain, and how to re-engage their wise owl and get control over that barking dog, were used at the individual level with kids. So I think maybe that addresses the question a little bit.
Yeah. No, that addresses it perfectly. Thank you guys again for answering all of the questions. I see there's still a couple of people on here, but we're gonna wrap it up and end it for today. And if you guys still have any questions, just feel free to email us at the Blanco Center or reach out to Sheri and Cassandra. I believe we dropped their emails in the chat, but yeah,
Thank you all.
thank you all.
Thank you.